to start. The other delegates will join us in the middle of the session because we are unfortunately bound by time. Thank you very much for joining this session 8 of the last day of the 5th International Conference on Tax in Africa. My name is Romeo Ella. I'll be your program director, but I'm not the one to moderate this session. I'm leaving this to the very capable hands of Madame Véronique Hermini. Is the current Commissioner General of the Seychelles Revenue Commission. She's a chartered accountant, and for those who don't know, Madame Hermini is also a member of the board of the ATAF Women in Tax Network. She's very active on a continental level on tax issues, especially when it comes to women empowerment. The session will focus on systems of electronic transactions, but Madame Hermini will tell you more about it. Over to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Romeo. Good afternoon to all the presenters and of course all the participants who are attending this session, and also all those who have been participating in this conference since Wednesday. This session, as Romeo mentioned, we will cover the electronic transaction systems. We have all mostly attributed electronic transaction systems for administrative transactions, such as payroll processing and banking. And they are also now very commonly being applied by businesses for billing and purchasing of goods and services. Such goods and services are generally liable to value-added tax, to VAT, which is a consumption tax, as you all know, applicable at different stages of the distribution chain. The application of VAT can be complex and thus offers possibilities for fraud and tax evasion. As part of the modernization of processes for tax authorities and to mitigate fraud and evasion, technological support and digitalized systems are being introduced to better track transactions at the different levels of the supply chain, thus enabling a more efficient verification of input VAT claims and output VAT liabilities. Electronic transaction systems provide secure real-time sales data to both the supplier and of course to us, the tax authorities. So in this session, we will highlight the role of electronic transaction systems in VAT compliance. Rwanda and Malawi are two of the countries on the African continent whose tax authorities are making use of such systems. The first presentation will be delivered by Mr. Emi Mbera and Ms. Louise Kalisa from the Rwanda Revenue Authority. My apologies if by any chance I misspelled your names. They will cover tax control system and VAT compliance. Rwanda, I gather, implemented an intelligence tax control system using electronic billing machine, EBM technology for access to real-time sales data. So to all the participants, please make use of the Q&A at the bottom of the screen in case you have any questions to the presenters. So over to you from Rwanda Revenue Authority, and grateful if you can please try your best to stay within the 20 minutes allotted so that we can all join the main session thereafter. So over to you.
Thank you so much, Madam the moderator. Thank you for giving us this time. I'll try to give just a simple introduction. Then let my colleague Amy take us through RRA journey, Rwanda Revenue Authority journey using the electronic transaction systems. You already mentioned it. VAT is a complex tax to administer, even to correct, given its characteristics. So that's why Rwanda Revenue Authority since 2013 deployed a system as we know it as EBM. It's actually I would say it's a electronic transaction system, but mainly because when we introduced it, it was based on electronic billing machine. So that name stayed, but as we see through the slides Mbera will share with you, it's evolved into now a software-based the version that we have currently. So without delay, so that we even meet the time that we have, that is 20 minutes, I'll let Mbera take you through the slide that we prepared, and we will be ready to respond to any question. So Mbera, over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, moderator. I'm Commissioner General Seychelles. My name is Emi Mbera. I'm the head of electronic billing program. This is a program. It was, as Louis said before, you used to call it electronic billing machine because we started with the machine. But now we found that it's a system. So it's a system, and which have a lot of projects linked to it. And we opted to have it as a program. So I think we have shared with you slides. I'm not sure if I'm going to use mine or to use the ones we shared previously. Please let me know the one I will share.
Hi, Amy. Please use the one that you have with you. Thank you. You can share the screen.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So can everyone see these slides? These slides I'm sharing?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. As the moderator said, actually, in our context in Rwanda, the VAT accounts for between 33 and 35% of total collections of total tax head. If you combine income tax, customs duty, pay as you earn, and all the taxes, the VAT alone accounts for between 33 and 35. And by nature, the VAT is a consumption tax. And then this actually makes the complexity of this tax, taking into account that actually consumption takes every time of our hours, starting from morning to evening, and everywhere in every corner of the country, consumption is happening every time and everywhere. And the VAT is charged to different levels of transactions. If you take the importations, the manufacturing, up to retailers, that actually starts making the complexity of the VAT administration. And as we all know, the burden of VAT is on last consumers, but actually the last consumers are not held accountable for paying or not paying the VAT. And I think none of administration can think involving the payers in order to make them accountable to pay or not to pay the VAT. Actually, that is included in the price of goods and services they pay. What actually the government do is to license the VAT collectors, what we call VAT registered taxpayers. So you find that one of the criteria conditions we set is the threshold, set the threshold, maybe to think of about the capacity of taxpayers to collect that money and to submit it to the tax administration, maybe accounting capabilities, system-wise, all of that. That's why maybe tax administration are setting some threshold. But what we do actually, we license those collectors to collect on behalf of the government. So in countries where transactions are cash-based, you understand that there is a high level of evasion because we are leaving the money into the taxpayers' premises and then counting on their goodwills to submit the VAT received to the tax administration. So they can submit or they can't submit. And then if you want to do the audit of all the transactions, you may understand why actually it's not even possible to do the audit. Actually, taking into account internal resources, we do select some cases for audit, but we cannot audit all of them. And actually, we should be in a circumstances we should think of auditing on the transaction, and it's not actually possible. So this is actually making the VAT a tax which is complex to administer, as the moderator said. In a system where transactions are not electronic, where we still use manual invoicing, from those actually who work for tax audit, tax investigation, they are familiar with the forging of invoices. They are familiar with parallel sales invoicing. As we all know, some companies are family-owned companies, and then for them actually there is no need even to keep the accounting. So they may be able to get the paper for tax administration, paper for banks, paper for shareholders, and all of that. So, and they do this, the forgery and the parallel sales, they do this either to overstate input VAT to be claimed or to understate the VAT collected on sales. In this condition, the tax administration, what it does is to rely on audit. After submitting the VAT declaration, tax administration do set the audit, and you understand the time to audit paper and even the staff, the cost related to that audit and time. Actually, it's expensive. Another weakness or challenge is a proactive approach to curb non-compliance activities or behavior. And then the biggest one also is the lack of data and information security, because all is related to the paper. So these challenges made RRA in 2013 actually to think and implement a technology that we call EBM, electronic billing machines. But as we explained, we may replace the machine by system. So what does that technology, in order to overcome actually these challenges I've previously indicated? This system allows the sellers to create an invoice, which is a security market. Every invoice has its unique number and receipt signature, which differentiate it from another one. So for all the sales transaction, the system helps users to create that invoice, which is security market, as I said. So that information also is kept in a secure manner, all the created invoices. This is to say that even from the invoice number one we have created in 2013, we still have it in our database, and even the taxpayer who printed that invoice is still keeping that record. So the invoice is printed. We have an original and a copy for filing. An original is given to the buyer, but the copy is left with the seller for filing purposes in case. But even if those copies are destroyed or missed out, we can still generate other invoices for them, because we have all the transactions kept to RRA servers. Another function which is the key is to share all the information on the invoices with the Rwanda Revenue Authority in real and real time. Real time, because actually each transaction done on taxpayer side is reported on real time to RRA, but because of maybe huge data which are transmitted to our server, sometimes we delay the submission for 30 minutes, 1 hour, or 6 hours in order not to have a jump in transmitting data to RRA server. So if we understand functionally that we have a system working like this, it's very easy to understand that the forgery actually is no longer possible, at least for the invoice which has been generated. The parallel sales invoicing is not a case because already if they have generated an invoice and sent to RRA server, there is no possibility again to keep another copy of invoices in a parallel way. So tax audit, we are no longer relying on comprehensive tax audit, but we do conduct issue-related audits and desk audit because we have data and we are taking benefit of that, the data available to us, and then do the data matching in order to conduct more issue audit related and the desk audit rather than comprehensive audit, which takes a long time. Today, actually, after a filing period, we do estimate what amount of taxes maybe we are losing from the cost. But when we match the data, we can estimate how much money maybe we are losing through fraudulent activities because we have data. The only point which actually we are working on today is actually the understatement and the overstatement of input, and maybe I will explain it later. But the other one, actually, we may say that we are confident at 90% that actually it's working and it has helped us to overcome the challenges I shared with you. So how did we go with that technology? In 2013, actually, we started with 2 devices connected with a cable and with a SIM card, which helps actually to transmit communication from the taxpayer side to our to RRA administration. We're using a SIM card, which is inserted into this gadget with the antenna, what we call set data controller. Actually, this is the core component of the EBM. On the left side, you have that device, which we call CIS, Certified Invoicing System, which generates an invoice. And after an invoice is generated, when you press OK button, all the information are transmitted into that small gadget with the antenna to get keys, the other security market I was telling you, to get keys to store. And then once that function is done, then the information is coming back to the CIS to say, please go ahead and print. Once an invoice is printed, again, this device sends the information to the RRA server on real time in order to share the same information we have and the information on the side of taxpayers. So this technology was implemented, as I said, since 2013 up to now. We are still using some few cases of them are in use, but we are actually we have stopped the importation of these devices. Now we are on software based, as Commissioner Luis said. So, but in the way of implementing this, somewhere around between 2014 and 2015, we introduced an all-in-one device. Actually, we combined the both functionalities into one machine for easy usage and affordability, but still the communication was through the GSM in order to get the data. This means wherever you have communication network, still that technology can work. No need of having the internet for it to work. So because of some challenges we had with this hardware, we actually thought and introduced a technology which is based on the software. We called it EBM 2.0. That's where we started in 2017. So we developed the software, but actually which is based on the firmware that was in these gadgets, and then we upgraded it a bit and then added some more functionalities such that when you import all the goods or when you purchase from someone using similar system, all the information are copied without even having the intervention. So whenever you do importation, after clearing, all the importations are captured into the stock of your system automatically. And then this is some kind of functions we added to the which did not exist from the usage of the hardware solution. And again, the service delivery and the cost of compliance has reduced drastically because RRA can provide the service free of charge. Actually, we installed this software free of charge to taxpayers' devices, laptop or desktop, or any other POS free of charge. And then we train and we maintain this application free of charge. So we give the service remotely because we have that software, it's very possible. So later on this year, we have implemented the EBM 2.1 solution, whereby actually for this device to have the EBM 2.1, it requires to have a Windows operating system. And then we made some upgrade for the system also to be worked under Android operating system, and then be installable in other devices such as tablets. So today we can install that software into tablets. We can install it into what we call PDA. Those are small POS, like those we are using to pay in banks, like using the bank credit and debit cards. So we do set some kind of requirement, basic requirement, and then once they fulfill, we install that software into those devices. So we have today actually managed also to install the application of EBM 2.1 into smartphones in order to respond to the need of small taxpayers, because maybe something I did not mention, from 2013 to 2019, only VAT registered taxpayers were required to use this system. But from 2019 to onwards, the government actually required even non-VAT registered to use the EBM. So that's where actually we have a big population of small taxpayers who actually are required to use their smartphones to generate invoices. So if you use your smartphone, there is no need to print an invoice. Rather, you send an SMS to the buyer with an invoice details, and the invoice submitted, shared with the buyer is also submitted to RRA for recording purposes. So for other taxpayers who maybe generate few invoices like services, consultant, legal, accountant, renting, transportation services, we have introduced an online EBM solution for them actually not to required to use computing devices. So for those taxpayers who have their invoicing systems, such as telecom companies, insurance, hotels, we are no longer requiring them to use this small gadget to do integration, the self-data controller. Rather, actually, we have developed what we call virtual self-data controller, which is, again, a soft solution, which helps us to integrate different systems. And we promote, actually, taxpayers to use their own system, but connected to RRA. This gives us, actually, a room of improving. So what approach did we go for? First of all, we define technical specification because we know what we want. And then we certify the suppliers of the system based on technical specifications. And then we, from the beginning, hired a consultant, external consultant, to develop even these technical specifications because we were not aware of that. Apart that we had at that time the idea. And then we developed the legal instrument to force taxpayers, of course, to use it, and then have some provision for those who are non-compliant, how they can be forced to comply. And then we developed the EBM structure, the team to oversee the operation for compliance and adoption. And then we went with the pilot phase. And then after the successful pilot phase, we did the rollout of the usage. And later on, we validated the control. We implemented some validation control into the declaration system, as I will show you in the next slide. And then currently we have developed a data analytics team, which actually is doing better because we have data. Now we take advantage of that and then raise the capacity of this. So how are we controlling actually the VAT compliance, at least on the declaration part? Today, a taxpayer is using the EBM far from where the RRA is working from, and no one like RRA staff is there, only the seller and the client. The data are submitted to the back office, the EBM back office, where we store all the information related to invoices issued. Actually, the way you have that invoice is the way we have that invoice in the EBM back office. Then, because taxpayers are using eTax to submit their VAT return, once they are ready and they want to submit their return, first of all, we have an option today of checking all the input tax from importation and local purchases. So if you want to submit your VAT return and you're saying, I've purchased from so and so, so we do check first if those invoices are existing into EBM system. If they are not existing there, we submit you an information, automated actually information to say, this invoice does not exist into the EBM system, therefore you cannot claim it. So if you say I've imported some goods where I've paid VAT, the eTax checks in data warehouse to see that, do we really have that document with the amount, document number, and the importer? If it is okay, we accept you that input, and if not okay, we tell you, unfortunately, we do not have that document that you are submitting. So this, having said this, I'm confirming that we are validating transaction by transaction, not a total amount, but we are validating transaction by transaction, whether local purchases or importations. So any input tax must be substantiated with the EBM invoice. Other than that, we cannot give you the input VAT. So this applies even for privileged person who do claim the refund, even if they are not required to submit the declaration. But we have set a way where they submitted this information and to validate them through the EBM automated way. So the cells also, we do validate your cells such that you cannot submit less cells than what is in the EBM system. So if you're saying I've transacted with 20 million, yes, we do check here. If you have 21, we tell you, no, you can't proceed with your declaration because you have 21 million. But you can submit 30 million or 50, even if you have 20, because we believe maybe there are some problem whereby some transactions were not captured into the system. So this validation also applies for the income tax filing, whether CIT or PIT on the annual basis. We will not go through details of this, but this is to say that what we are looking for implementing the EBM is to collect the data, on sales, on purchases, and what we are collecting is more than the amount. We do collect the time, we do collect items sold, we do collect the quantity, we do collect the price, we do collect the rate. So we collect all the kind of information that you can find on the invoices. And that way, the data analytics team has developed for us the automated analysis reports. So such that we can go through each and get whatever we want to get from those taxpayers. You can look at number 5, for example, the stock quantity analysis. This is a powerful tool whereby we do tell a taxpayer, today, when we analyze your stock level, we can see that you still have like 90% of purchases or importations. Is it possible that still you still have that level of stock? So we can do the supply chain analysis after importation or local manufacturer, where did the good go? And then this is a very powerful analysis that we are doing in order to raise the compliance and all of others. So like if you cancel an invoice, someone cannot claim it. Thanks to the data matching, we are doing it and prior to the submission of return. So some studies actually have been conducted by international organizations such as IGC and others. They have shown us that the EBM has contributed to actually the reducing of time it takes to submit a return from 45 to 5 hours, because we do generate Excel sheet for them, whether for sales or for purchases, and then they do not do the calculation and hire accountant to do that job. And then when we implemented the EBM from 2013 to September 14, the IGC did the research and confirmed that the EBM has contributed to the increase of tax compliance by 6.5%. And actually that time we had very few number of users. I'm finishing to this slide, and next to this there is only one slide, and just to conclude by that. You can see that this is the percentage of growth, actually, the VAT payable. As I said, we implemented it to 2013. When we compared the VAT payable in 2014, we had an increase of 42.11% of the VAT payable. And if you look at even the COVID year, coronavirus year 2020, we managed actually to have about 2.3% as compared to 2019, which actually we attribute to the usage of data. And if you compare, for example, January to July, from 13 to 2021, you can see that actually 2021 is still above all the years, and the 2020, the one who suffered a lot because of COVID. Actually, we had the first case of COVID in March 2020. Then the government decided to go lockdown. You can see that that's where we went down, but we intensified actually the usage of data for those businesses who were allowed to continue operating. And you can see that up to May, actually, from May, the data for 2020 were above 2019, starting June. And this year, 2021, you can see that it's above, and only in July this year, we had a lockdown again with the Delta COVID, variant COVID. That's where actually we decreased a bit, but it was not a big decrease. So after July up to now, actually we are still growing in terms of percentage. If you compare July 2021 to July 2020, and even if you can compare it to 2019, we still realizing good performance. And actually this we attribute it to the usage of data that we have. So with saying this, I thank you for your attention. Time was short, but I think I provided the maximum of information we were supposed to provide. Thank you very much.
Thank you for such an insightful presentation. It looks like you have definitely accelerated the use of technology in your authority. So our next presentation is, which will cover electronic fiscal devices, EFDs, is by Mr. Bentry Konye from the Malawi Revenue Authority. Malawi introduced EFDs for the monitoring of VAT compliance. So over to you, Mr. Konye.
Thank you very much. I think you are supposed to share my presentation from that end. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Bentre Konje. I am from Malawi, and I'm making this presentation on behalf of Malawi Revenue Authority, and I work as a VAT manager, but through and through, I've been the manager for the EFDs. Just like any other revenue authority, administration of VAT for Malawi has not been very easy. We started by targeting manufacturers and the service providers. And then in 2002, we expanded and we included wholesalers and retailers. And it's this group that has given rise to having the EFDs which we have introduced. So the presentation will be looking at the background to the introduction of EFDs in Malawi. What were the challenges and tried solutions before their introduction? Then how the whole concept was conceptualized. And then we'll look at the EFDs management and the procedures. And finally, we'll end up with the challenges and lessons that we have learned so far. Next slide, please. So when we expanded the VAT to include the wholesalers and the retailers, we faced the traditional problems which are faced when you are looking at VAT as a consumption tax. Many traders were not declaring their purchases as well as sales. And then some would not issue tax invoices with an aim not to account for VAT. Then some were maintaining multiple sets of books or parallel records. The whole aim was to have books which they were making for declarations, and then other books which they were not declaring. And then we had a group of taxpayers that were busy issuing fake tax invoices, especially those that were generating invoices from their computers. Next. Others, if they have got branches, they would not disclose branches, and the sales from the branches, they were not declaring them. Then we had also a problem of where they were claiming non-deductibles. The VAT on imports, which was not supposed to be deducted, they continued deducted with an aim of minimizing what they were paying. Then we had also a problem of incomplete records. When we try to make fallouts on enforcements, you find that they are not keeping records, or if they have, the records were very insufficient, so you wouldn't follow. And then that was coupled with the emergence of the e-commerce, where most of them, they started paying each other through mobile money and other means, whereby those transactions, they were not declaring them. Next. Then we had also an abuse in terms of the VAT refunds and the exemptions. So we had some solutions which we tried to curb that, which did not work as expected. So we intensified on audits and inspections. Our roles are that we can carry out inspections or audits every quarter, but with challenges in terms of personnel, that was not very possible. But that was one of the solutions we tried. Then we came up with sit-in exercises where we would position some officers in some of the traders' places in order to monitor their transactions. But that had also its own challenges. It did not work much. And then we also had a mock buying, where we are sending groups of people to try and procure goods or services, so that if they are not issued with the tax invoices, then he would punish them. But again, that still did not alleviate the challenges. Next. So in the course of that, there was a time when the high-level delegation, they visited some countries to learn on what is happening in other countries in order to curb these VAT problems in terms of compliance. So the government and the MRI officials that visited Tanzania and Ethiopia, and then Kenya. And from there now, they learned that there were other methods which our friends were using. And that is what marked the birth of EFDs in Malawi. And these were introduced after those visits, and then a project team was appointed to look at the whole implementation of EFDs. And next. So maybe you may be interested to know, to say, what are these EFDs? You know, EFDs, it's a way of electronic capturing transactions electronically. And we have devices that one can be used at a point of sale to capture the transaction, to issue either invoices or cash sales. And when you are issuing those invoices or cash sales, they have got two memories. They have got the EJ, which is the electronic journal, where all the transactions are stored. And then they have got the physical memory, which stores the summaries of those transactions. But then these devices, again, they have got the ability to transact the information that has been captured to our servers at MRA, where we use a management system which can generate the reports that can now be used by officers when they are carrying out their enforcement activities. Next. So just to add on that, these are usually on the point of sale or selling points, and they are coming in three main types. We have got what we call electronic tax registers. Usually they are used by taxpayers that use manual cash sales and the invoices. They are standalone devices. They are more or less like the normal electronic cash registers, but the difference is that these ones, they are able to transmit the information from the seller, who is a taxpayer, to the revenue authority. And then again, they can store the information in the two memories that I just mentioned, the electronic journal and the physical memory. And at any time, you can revisit either the devices to check the information, or you can check the information from the end of the revenue authority, which might have been transmitted to the devices themselves. So the images you see down there, those are examples of electronic physical devices. And these are standalone, as you can see. And the second group is the electronic physical printers. These are usually used by taxpayers that have got point of sale systems. They are small printers, but they work the same way as electronic tax registers, in the sense that they can store the information and they can also transmit the information. And the images you see down there, they are examples. And the one which you see at the far end, which looks smaller, is still an electronic physical printer, but those ones are the mobile ones. So a taxpayer can carry it to wherever they want to transact, and they can use they can connect using Wi-Fi, and they can still print invoices or cash sales. Next. So the other group is what we call the electronic signature devices. These ones are connected in between the source of the invoices and the printer. And they are mostly used by those that are using computerized systems or they have got accounting packages and they don't want their customized invoices to be tampered with. They want them to still reflect the details as they want. So what the device will do is that it will be trained to simply recognize what is an invoice. And when you are printing the invoice or the taxpayer is printing the invoice, then the device is able to capture the information contained in that invoice and then transmit that data to MRA the same way like the other devices. But these ones are mostly used by those that have got computerized systems, as I've said, and then accounting packages. But their connectivity, they are not as difficult. Usually they are very easy to connect as well, to integrate with systems. Next. So in short, that's how the ESDs work, what you are seeing there. So you will see that you will have an ESD, which will be connected to the system or your computer system. And then when you are printing, it will be busy signing the invoices, at the same time capturing the information and then eventually transmitting it to MRA. Next. Now, why did the MRA go for these devices? There are some benefits which come with these devices, and it was upon appreciation of those benefits that MRA embarked on a journey to implement them. And one of them is that it reduces fraudulent accounting in the sense that these are devices which are more or less like helping to control the invoices or tax invoices. So since the tax invoices are controlled, and when they are issued, they are controlled by these devices, and the information is transmitted, somehow taxpayers in terms of fraudulent activities, they tend to go down. And then again, since the sales data or information is transmitted beforehand or in advance, then auditors, when they are planning for their audits, the part of information which they need from the sales side, they are able to get it in advance, and they can make all their preparations. And when they are now visiting the taxpayer to execute the actual audits, they don't have to waste time looking at the sales information. They have to concentrate on the input side. So therefore, it also reduces the audit time that the auditors will require. And since you have the information which is transmitted, when the returns are eventually submitted and you do the audits, issues of disputes, they tend to go down. But again, if you look at how nowadays people are storing information, the use of paper in this case is reduced. That cost goes down because even for the taxpayer themselves, they will be able to store the tax invoices and the physical receipts within the devices, memories. And then if the MRA or revenue authorities, they want to check, they'll be able to check electronically. So it's paperless law, which is being advocated nowadays. Next. In terms of data analysis, these devices are quite helpful because you have all the sales information. And when the return is submitted by the taxpayer, you simply have to compare what came in the system and then what is coming as per what taxpayers are submitting. So the intelligence of doing that analysis, it's really assisted. And in case a taxpayer is accused that maybe your information is not correct, they can use the information from these devices to prove that they are innocent and they are not guilty. By controlling the invoices, again, the issues which I narrated at first, how people were cheating, they tend to go down. So you tend to level the playing field for the registered taxpayer, provided enforcement activities are up to date. Next. So the other part that was looked at is that even taxpayers, they have got some benefits. Those that are using computerized systems, there was no need for them to change all their systems. It was a matter of integrating. And in terms of use of paper, those that were on manual invoicing and the like, greatly reduced. Next. As I said, police proof of innocence, which the Revenue Authority also capitalizes on, is also again working to the advantage of taxpayers. Next. So unlike other systems, these are compatible to networking. It's a matter of choosing the right type of fiscal device that you use. So if you know that you are on a network, you may go for the fiscal printers, or you may go for the ESD, and then you may not go for the one that is standalone, the electronic tax registers. Then they say proper, secure, and reliable business records keeping, straightforward. And for business like competitors loss and fair advantage under fiscal scrutiny, that's again straightforward. It's all about fair trading and fair practicing. Next. Now, when we were rolling out, the team that was selected to roll out, its composition, it had people from technical domestic taxes, legal, IT, and then supply chain. The domestic taxes officers, basically, they were to handle technical issues about VAT. And the legal personnel is because there was a requirement to change the law. So to change the law, we needed people from legal to be in the team. And since the system, it's IT based, then again, it incorporated people from IT. But as you'll be seeing later on, when you look at the stakeholders, the devices are not manufactured in Malawi. They are manufactured outside Malawi. And then we have got some companies within Malawi that do the actual selling and the installation of these devices. And then for connectivity to be there, we still need mobile phone operators to use their SIM cards, especially on the transmission of data. And to do all this, we needed people from supply chain to handle the procurement. So that's why the implementation team has to comprise of people from domestic taxes, technical, legal, IT, and supply chain. Next. So that's generally the structure, and we'll be fast. There was a project steering committee, which was headed by the Commissioner General. And since it is something that is implemented within the domestic taxes, then the project owner was the Commissioner of Domestic Taxes, and then the team which I mentioned. But for enforcement, it had to go to those that are actually dealing with the taxpayers. So enforcement is being done in stations. But now we'll be moving towards, we are implementing block management. So enforcement may be shifting from actual stations to go to the blocks that have been created. Next. Quickly, I go through the initial programs that were there. There were visits to countries like Ethiopia, Kenya, and Tanzania. One of the reasons why we visited all those countries is that these countries, they use different systems. At that time in Kenya, there was no connectivity between devices and the Revenue Authority servers. So they were not transmitting the information directly. They were relying on the summaries, which they call the Z reports at the end of the day. But Tanzania, they had that connectivity. And the same with Ethiopia. So by visiting the three countries, we're able to appreciate and choose which system we thought would best suit our system. And the concept paper was developed and the development of the project implementation matrix, so that would be followed. Next. The assessment of legal provisions, identification of stakeholders to the project, development of IFD and EFDMS electronic physical management systems specifications. The specifications were developed for both the devices themselves, as well as the system that is managing the devices, because we wanted them to be suiting our situation in Malawi. So these devices, if one is to go for them, or a revenue authority wants to go for them, in terms of what they can do and what you want them to do, you can still do it by coming up with your own specifications, which may not be exactly the same as those other countries that are using them. Next. The bid documents, they are purely for to float the bid and then for people to come forward and express their interest so that we engage them. On the legal provisions, it was purely to change our law, and then the identification of stakeholders, it was to see who would be involved. Then the development of EFDs and EFDs physical management system specification, that's the system that is managing them, and which reports would require for us to enforce the usage properly. We had to develop them, and then the bid documents for various suppliers. So we had suppliers for the devices themselves, who are mostly international, and we had to come up with bid documents that we floated internationally. Then we have got those that are responsible for the selling of the devices within Malawi, maintenance of the devices, and training of taxpayers on how to use the devices. So we had to come up again with bid documents for them, and then connectivity, which mobile telephone companies to be engaged. So those documents were all developed as part of preparations. Next. Next, yeah. Part that is covered, we can just go to the next slide. So, yeah. So the selection process in Malawi, it had to go through the national selection process, where every government company or institution, when you are procuring, whatever you do eventually has to be endorsed by the government. So after international bidding and the local bidding, then we had to ask for a no objection from government before procurements were made. Next. That is all about how procurement was done, which may not be very important for our discussion. But maybe just to pick one thing to say, after the whole process of procurement was done, there was still need for due diligence, where those that are suppliers based outside were visited to ascertain if whatever they expressed in their bid documents were really true, because sometimes the bid documents may speak something, and when you physically visit these people, it will be something else. Next. Now, when we were rolling out, there was that one part which was very important. This was about sensitization. So we came up with sensitization programs, which were for various stakeholders. And one of them, it was for the consumers. The consumers, we engaged them because we knew that to enforce usage, to make sure that proper invoices or receipts are generated, and the invoices from these devices, we call them electronic fiscal receipts. There was need for customers to be interested to be obtaining the fiscal receipts. But when we just looked at the general attitude of buyers in Malawi, is that most of them, you find that when they are buying, they did not have interest to say they should demand the receipt to be issued. So if physical receipts, which are tax invoices issued from these devices, are not issued, it meant that there was no work done. Taxpayers would still continue selling without issuing because nobody is demanding. So sensitization had to be done to buyers to make sure that they develop an interest in demanding the receipts as part of enforcement when they are making their purchases. Next. The other part is that we had problems which were targeting the VAT operators themselves, registered taxpayers. We tried to bring to their attention the advantages that they would get by using these devices. This was done also knowing that if they did not change their behavior, then still more, they would not be using devices. And though we have officers on the ground to do the enforcement, but if they don't want to use, you cannot always be there. If you look at business-to-business transactions, in most cases, those ones you find that they may transact even without the knowledge of anybody else. So we tried to, again, sensitize them to make sure that as the operators, they embrace the technology and the idea, and they should be using these devices. Next. So the models which we used in the sensitization, we had public awareness campaigns through scheduled meetings and television and radio programs. Next. Then again, we had the meetings with the taxpayers, business communities, and then we had the open taxpayer forums where we invite taxpayers to come, gather, and then we talk to them. Next. Yeah, all that is about the groups that were targeted in terms of sensitization and meetings to make sure that people are prepared for the rollout. Next. And then the other part, which was very important, is that we also had the internal sensitization as an institution, where we looked at departments from within, and also we looked at stations and sections. And this was because in most cases where you introduce a new technology, what happens sometimes, resistance starts from within. So what we wanted was to make sure that the officers are ready to embrace, because even if information is obtained through these devices, but if it is not put to use when you are carrying out enforcement activities, then the benefits will not be as expected. Next. That was the slogan which we were using when we were carrying out the campaigns, develop Malawi Pay VAT, trying to change the mindset of people or buyers as well as any other stakeholder so that they should embrace the technology. You can go to the next slide. So the implementation approach was a two-phased one because of the type of devices that we have. As you can see, the two other devices, electronic physical printers and electronic signature devices, they are supposed to be connected to taxpayer systems integration, which would take a bit of time. But if you look at the others, which will say the electronic tax registers, they are standalone. So the first phase, we introduced the ETR, electronic tax registers. And these we targeted small taxpayers and the medium ones, where we have got massive problems. Then the second phase is when we introduced the devices, which were mostly for right taxpayers, those that are using electronic fiscal printers and electronic signature devices. But for what that was done, we did the piloting, we identified pilot sites. And then after the pilot was proved to be successful, is when now we went into actual rollout. Next. Next slide. So when rolling out, we gave a 3 months grace period to taxpayers to acquire the devices and start using. That was to manage the transition from their systems to these new systems. So it took about 3 months, which was a grace period where we would allow people to still trade using their systems, but constantly reminding them that they are supposed to move to the new system which government had introduced. There were issues of awarding contracts to suppliers, licensing manufacturers and the suppliers, gazetting of the law, and then the identification of taxpayer for the pilot as we are going towards those 2 phases. Next. Next. Yeah, that was part of preparation where we verified the information on our registered. So in the management of devices, the key stakeholders that are involved are the taxpayers, the users, suppliers, because they have to maintain and register the devices. Sorry, I went to the slide for this one. So on
Mr.
the
Konye, Mr. Konye?
yeah, I think that's okay.
Okay.
That's okay.
Is it your last
this slide
slide?
was, yeah, that's fine.
Okay, all right. We're running out of time.
Okay, so maybe then let's see, go just to the next slide about the so far what has been the challenges and the response rate. Yeah, let's go next slide. So yeah, actually, so we have got some enforcement activities, which include visiting taxpayers and checking their usage. And we have got penalties which are charged if people are not using the devices. The enforcement programs, they range from those that are on the desk as well as the field activities. But however, we have had challenges with these devices. Some of the challenges have affected the suppliers themselves. Sometimes spares are scarce. Devices, especially with this COVID, are sometimes scarce. And then even responding to the needs of the local distributors who are selling, sometimes it's not forthcoming by the manufacturers. And then the other challenges that are still there is the conniving between taxpayers and the buyers. So sometimes they will not issue invoices, and you cannot have officers everywhere. And then the buyers themselves, they are not really keen to say each time they have to demand these receipts. So far, some of the lessons which we have read from what we have done is that one, these devices are, there are more advanced devices that are coming in. So we are moving towards that. And then these devices were purely targeting sales. But now we are rolling out the stock management module so that the same devices, taxpayers should be uploading their stock in the devices before they start changing. But care must be taken when you are selecting manufacturers and local suppliers, because sometimes you select some that eventually you find that they are not living up to your expectation. Again, there are more devices that are coming, like the visual devices now, the ones which we are going towards, and those ones, again, they need to be looked at. Then the awareness campaigns, they are very crucial in these devices, because as long as taxpayers are not demanding physical receipts, then enforcement becomes a challenge. Expectations, again, sometimes is that automatically the sales will be growing when you have rolled out these devices. But there is a lot that you need to do. One, you need to carry on the enforcement, and then again, you need to intensify the audits, because sometimes taxpayer, when they know that you are controlling the sales, then they start cheating by using purchases. They inflate input VAT claims. When you are outsourcing some of the requirements, like in our case, we have outsourced the management system, which is managing the devices. We are paying annually a fee, which makes the whole initiative to be a bit expensive. So sometimes it's better to have internal systems developed, which can be cheaper. Next. Next.
Apologies, there's something wrong with the screen.
I think, yeah, I think we are not on the next slide.
My apologies, Madam Chair, but we really should start wrapping up.
Because I can see the slides are, okay, finally.
Yes, okay, so in short, what we can say that these devices, they are really helpful, but what they require is that you should really be keen in terms of enforcement on usage, because if they are not being used, you'll not get the right information. But again, even internally, different sections that require to use the information, they should be using it, because sometimes cheating can be from the other end. But at the same time, after the implementation of these devices, it gives you a good background when you are moving into the next technologies, which are more advanced technologies, and actually you are able to get even more fruits from these systems that you can use to try and control the invoices or tax invoices, which taxpayers.
Okay, Mr. Bentry, I have to unfortunately stop you there. If you don't mind, thank you so much for the presentation. I can see that you have already some questions. So if you can please respond to them. The Rwanda Revenue Authority also had a couple, which the presenters have responded. So thank you so much to the presenters. And I'm pretty certain all the participants had some benefits, seen some benefits from using the systems. So good luck to all of you for the rest of the session. Thank you so much.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente. C'était une session très, très intéressante. Et je ne sais pas si vous voulez peut-être prendre 5 minutes maximum pour essayer de répondre aux questions qui sont posées sur la rubrique questions-réponses. Nous pouvons accorder encore 5 minutes le temps d'y répondre rapidement.
I noticed that the presenters from Rwanda already answered a couple. So it's only Mr. Konye who needs to address his. I think there's one specifically for him. Mr. Konye, can you see the questions? If you can click at the bottom.
I can see, is it the one which they are talking of the initiative being an odd initiative?
Strategies.
I
But
can't
you
see
can
the
actually,
question.
I think you can actually respond to them, no? If you can type the response. Is that possible, Romeo? Even after the session ends?
Yes, yes, it is possible.
Oui, parfaitement. Il y a deux questions aussi. Il y a une question adressée à Monsieur Mbera. Je vais lire la question en français. Les interprètes vont traduire. Est-ce à dire que tous les risques de défaillance de la facturation électronique sont maîtrisés? C'est une question adressée à Monsieur Mbera. Et la question continue et dit « indisponibilité du courant électrique, du réseau télécom et de suppression des données ». Je ne sais pas si M. Mbera est toujours avec nous. Il peut peut-être répondre en 2 minutes. Ensuite, il y a une autre question. Comment le support technique ou l'assistance utilisateur est géré pour les machines installées sur les sites des contribuables?
Is Mr. Mbera still with us? Or Louise, maybe?
Yes, thank you. I think myself and Amy got disconnected. I think we have an issue of connection in the building. So I tried to join again using my phone. So I think he's also trying, but he hasn't joined yet. So I will try to respond to the questions starting by the first one. Asking if all the risk, all the challenges that we presented were resolved. I would say not all of them. I think Amy touched about it. The forgery of invoice, yes. The parallel invoice, yes. Even the time that it was taking us to do the audit, those ones were cleared. But and even the compliance part, but we are still implementing some control when it comes to the overstatement and understatement of the VAT. Those two challenges are still there, but as a revenue administration, we're also apparently someone cannot hear me. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, okay. So I saw in the chat someone saying that I look like I'm muted. So I was saying those are two challenges that we see that are still there. So that's why I are still trying to overstate their input as well as understand the output. But again, we are implementing more validation control so that we can also completely eliminate those two challenges. That was the first question. The second question, if I had well, is around now the availability of the network, but also the electricity. Fortunately, in our country, we don't have a lot of electricity downtime or challenges. That one is and at the same time, if you look at the solution that we have currently at the version, the second 2.1 version we have, it has a lot of options. So you can use your smartphone, you can use if you have it, you can use different devices like PDAs, some of the POS. So as the technology evolved, it's also tackled the cost part, but also giving more options to our taxpayers, and that I believe it's also good thing. Even if they say electricity, you can have your phone. Though we have electricity in most of the part of the country. We haven't had that challenge, like here someone saying, no, I can't issue the invoice because of electricity. That is covered. Same thing as the network. We have two telco, and the coverage of those telco is more. It's around is supporting around 98%. So, and when you look at the 2%, what maybe the parks, the national parks, but other than that, the coverage is good. How are we doing the support? How are we doing so that we have a team? We have a team of the taxpayer support actually managed by Amy. So he has a team that does like the level 1 support, where they receive requests from taxpayers and are able to process that. But at the same time, in the back end, we have the IT team that is now supporting the system itself, but also implement different enhancements, different that are needed. Yeah, that's, I can say that's pretty much how it's being provided to the taxpayers. Thank you. I don't know if there's any question that I didn't respond, because I was, since I joined with the phone, I did the interpretation myself in my head. So I don't know if there's any question that I didn't respond to. Thank you.
Thank you, Louise. Romeo, are we now moving on to the main room, or?
Merci beaucoup, Madame Hermini, et merci aussi à vos panélistes vraiment pour ces débats très, très intéressants et riches sur les systèmes de transactions numériques. Nous avons à peu près 15 minutes de pause avant la prochaine session qui va se dérouler en plénière. Donc, pour y accéder, je vous demanderai de vous déconnecter de la présente session et de repartir dans l'auditorium et de cliquer sur l'écran pour vous connecter à la session 9. Merci encore et à tout de suite.
Thank you, Romeo. Thank you, all the presenters. See you soon.
Thank you. See you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.